this is a bit more sort of the campaign angle. So once we know the problem and once we understand what we want to do, we then need a structure for making a plan. Now, in this group, over the coming weeks and months, we're going to focus on the various stages of FBAE. But what we're hoping to do is for each of you have conversations, plans that you then deliver over the autumn winter, and we then share through this group what's working, what's not, so everyone can improve together. So just to quickly remind you of the FBAE framework, you start with foundations, essentially the why, then go into a build phase where, considering you have your why, what do you start to do? Then the activation phase, which is triggered by a number of different things potentially. And then once you've done 2026, what will you do different in 2027? So the mindset around building these outcomes machines is they are designed to prove their return on investment. So time and money put into these things accelerates savings, improves lives for residents, reduces harm, increases savings for the council. And by focusing on this, you can remove a lot of subjectivity from conversations. You are controlling risk and waste by design and demonstrating that you're doing that. And in the long run, positioning communications less as the reactive, putting things out, and more as the essential element to service and policy delivery and also sustainability for the whole organisation. We're going to focus on foundations in this session. Later on, we will focus on build. And so wanted to give you some ideas on how to put good foundations in place for the rest of this year and into early next year. So just to remind you of what the foundation stage is, it is absolutely essential that you have a clear definition of the problem, that you understand how many people you want to do what, and also if they do that, what is the impact for the organisation, so that you can build something that will demonstrate how many people have done something and therefore how much the investment of time and maybe money has saved the organisation. You need to be able to prove that all the way through. So you're going to need to have conversations in your organisation soon. And that will be about understanding service data, service impact, looking at where savings could be made, and looking at previous communications campaign data to help understand how you might evolve what you've done over previous years. So you start with what went wrong or what could have been improved in 2025. What were the things that either went pop or slowly got worse and worse in winter 2025? Who in your organisation was affected? So which departments had to respond? What did that cost? And what was the impact on residents as well? And trying to get an idea of which of those things were unavoidable and which of those things were avoidable. And when you understand the avoidable things, you'll then be able to come up with, okay, these are the behaviours we probably want to be promoting. So like Lauren was saying, get a wind-up radio, put a sticker on it next to the frequency for emergencies, make sure there's batteries, have that conversation with vulnerable relatives and friends, start triggering a whole range of behaviours that help people get into the mindset and then hopefully into the habit of not putting themselves at unnecessary risk. And also very important, when do we want people to start doing these things? So do we start doing it when they're up to their knees in floodwater, or do we start getting them to put a grab bag together in August? That all these conversations are important. Now, these are what you need to get your hands on, but you're then going to need to speak to people soon and help them understand why prioritizing this stuff now, rather than being reactive later in the year, is going to make life much easier for them, much easier for residents, and will make the world a better place, frankly. So useful conversation starters. Why are we doing this in June, July? Well, Christmas ads are filmed in July and they start being deployed in October. So it is quite normal for organizations that have these regular, reoccurring, significant changes in demand to make plans now. So just to establish that as a norm. The things that are going to make 2026 better than 2025 that are in our control, we need to actually be planned and going live and triggering those behaviors in September and October, maybe even before. Are they invested in making 2026 less stressful than 2025 for residents, for the organization? Are they interested in learning about improving? Do they think there were things that could have been done better? Again, just a conversation starter there. Whilst the timing of the things that are likely to happen isn't known yet, we know there's probably going to be a flu outbreak. There's probably going to be some extreme weather events. These things happen not quite like clockwork, but we know almost certainly it would be a surprise if there weren't any of these things this coming winter. So that's why it would be silly not to plan. So shall we have a conversation about what went well and where there's room for improvement in 2025? So we want to be thinking about having those conversations with the right people and having multiple conversations across those directorates. There might be some overlap. It might be worth having those conversations together, but that's for you to judge. And we've got time on our side at the moment. So these triggers for conversations, getting those meetings in the diary in the next weeks and months is going to mean that we're not doing things at the last minute. We're not preparing data and business cases in a rush. So just wanted to give you some foundations examples. So significant amount of money allocated to people to help them avoid hardship during the winter, but many people don't take up any or all of the benefits they're entitled to. So an objective could be to encourage 5,000 most at-risk residents to use the benefits calculator or to go through some sort of benefits calculation with a person to help us reduce late intervention costs by 20%. So when people don't take what they're entitled to and they end up in an extreme situation, that usually has knock-on much higher costs for an array of public sector services. Now, this business case, do not use it. I've pulled the figures out of the air, but it's what one could look like. So when someone increases their benefits, who is at risk, it can save 8 times that amount in late intervention costs. We think about cold houses, we think about food and challenges like that. We know from other campaigns that to get people to take a benefits calculation, it's about £3 on advertising to then get a benefits calculation completed. The average benefits realized per calculation over 6 months is about £350. So every pound we spend on marketing realizes £116 for a resident. And that could mean that every pound we spend on marketing prevents around £1,000 of cost down the line. Again, that is an example of how you might put that data together. Don't use that data, find out what your own data is. That would then give you the business case for investing in targeting low-income households in your area to encourage them to take a benefits calculation, and then you could measure how many people did that. Another example is the cost of the flood response last year was about £870,000 combined across Blue Light and Council. Just almost half of that was avoidable. So if we can encourage 3,000 people in flood affected areas to make an array of different preparations, we think we can reduce avoidable cost by at least £100,000. And we'd like to spend £30,000 doing that. So it's just now over the summer, understanding these sorts of challenges and getting everything in place to then do something that reaches everybody and delivers measurable outcomes, people taking action, people self-verifying that they've done an array of different things to increase resilience. And let's see if we can test that. So your friends in this area will be certainly the service data, making sure you understand what happened, when, and what that cost. I think also will be your future comms team colleagues here, recent public sector campaigns in Scotland, learning from each other, maybe doing some large language model research, using things like comms files. Again, just making sure that everything that's been done in the public sector, you've had a little look at and learnt from, so that you can then make this clear business case. So this cost us that. If we do it using these tactics, should be able to make these sorts of savings. And just a reminder that at this point, an ad hasn't been designed, a channel hasn't been decided, a budget hasn't been agreed or accepted. But it's just about having that sort of conversation. The stage after foundations will be built, but I think that's one for maybe 6 weeks' time, once all of us have had these different conversations.